Beydoun. He is the author of a series of papers, the White Paper series, and the organization Take on Hate. They're working to establish a box on census forms that would help designate Middle Eastern or North African status. Khaled, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Now, tell us a little bit about the White Paper series and takeonhate.org.
Well, first off, Take on Hate is it's a grassroots campaign started by the largest Arab American organization in the country, the Network of National Arab Communities, which looks to you target racism, religious bigotry, xenophobia experienced by Arab and Muslim Americans specifically, but also branching out to also target the same kind of bigotry against communities of color, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and so forth, and build coalitions along common interests. And the white paper series is just a series of papers seeking to address some of the major areas of concern that Arab and Muslim Americans experience with regard to prejudice and bigotry.
Now, we were speaking earlier in the show about how this box designation that you are aiming to establish has been a problem for several different races for a very long time. And, as an African-American person and a Mexican man, I personally had never noticed. I look for my box, I check it, I move on. But if you are a Middle Eastern person or a North African person, this is troublesome. What steps are you taking with your organization to make sure that you guys are counted in an official way?
Well, Arab Americans and Middle Eastern Americans of all different national origins are now classified as white. The census does not have, as of now, a Middle Eastern or North African box or an Arab American box where individuals who want to identify as such can check. And this, obviously, the fact that Arab Americans are classified as white by law clearly conflicts with the way other segments of the government, Department of Homeland Security, how people, the media, and so forth perceive this community. So there's a disconnect and dissonance between the way Arab Americans are stereotyped and raced in this country versus the racial options Arab Americans have on the census form. So basically, what the campaign to Take on Hate is looking to do with its allies is to really push the government to adopt this new Middle Eastern or North Africa box on the 2020 census. There's been grassroots efforts since the 1980s, actually, where Arab American communities have looked to establish a standalone box on the census, and this is continuing now with the campaign to Take on Hate efforts, including scheduling teach-ins in various communities, town hall meetings, and also, obviously, authoring white papers, which we have addressing the range of interests that would come with the establishing of this MENA box.
And talk about those interests that you believe that would come. For example, in the white paper, you note existential, political, legal, and economic interests that Arab Americans stand to gain if the box is adopted.
Yeah, and we're really doing nothing new. We're learning from the experiences of other racial groups. Latinos, for instance, have really struggled with the way they've been designated in this country for decades. Same for Asian Americans. So essentially, being recognized by the census, having a standalone box, is the government acknowledging that you exist. Number one, right? And that existence, comes with a great source of, obviously personal satisfaction. But beyond that, there's political interests as well, which include, being able to mobilize the community politically, which attracts the interest of candidates, people running for office having to come speak to you, and obviously cater to your interests in order to get your vote. Second, economic interest, being classified as a distinct racial group, grants you access to government grants, loans, and so forth. In the educational realm, race-conscious and ethnic-conscious admissions programs currently exclude Arab Americans. So, for instance, if a school, let's say hypothetically, DePaul University is interested in diversifying its student body, Arab Americans are currently classified as white, and therefore will not be included in any kind of programming, outreach programming for admission, scholarship, and so forth. Also, the health realm. The fact that no statistics currently are collected that focus specifically on Arab and Middle Eastern Americans. What kind of afflictions, what kind of sicknesses are really pervasive in this community? We don't know. So no research can be conducted specifically to serve these communities. However, a classification, a MENA box, will alleviate these concerns and provide really focused information that could, obviously lead to preventative health campaigns, tailored treatment programs. So I can't overstate the importance of having this box because it clearly has influence in a range of realms that I discussed.
And, in this day and age, in 2015, the nuances around how we speak about language are great. And I feel, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel there has been progress made in how we discuss these issues. So I'm wondering, on the part of the government, what has been the challenge in getting them to acknowledge that a MENA box needs to exist for Arab Americans?
Again, there's been efforts since the 1980s. Different Arab American organizations, including the ADC, the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, the Arab American Institute, have really been at the fore of trying to establish a standalone Arab American box specifically. The government is rebuffed for a number of reasons. The most common reason they've cited is the fact that there aren't enough, the population isn't as great to have your own standalone box. A second box is, the Middle East or North Africa is a pretty broad expanse. It encompasses two continents, Africa and Asia, a range of nation states, different ethnicities. So you have Arabs, you have Iranians, you have Turks, you potentially have Israelis, you have ethnic minorities in North Africa, Berbers, Copts, Nubians, and so forth. Another reason the government has cited against the box is there's a lot of debate and discord as to how the classification should be framed. I think now there's progress for a number of reasons. Post 9/11, obviously, there's been a lot of racial profiling, racism and stereotyping of Middle Eastern North African Americans, which in some respects maybe has helped the government realize that, hey, we can call these people white, but the way we're treating them is anything but.
Yeah.
That's one factor, I think. The second factor is I think that, and it's not discussed as much, I've written some legal research pieces on it, but there's real government interest, I think, in having more precise and comprehensive data about Middle Eastern North African Americans linked to surveillance and profiling. Not all of it is good. It makes it easier for them to track these communities if they have this, standalone MENA box. And I think that's another interest as well, which is pushing the government to make reform in 2020.
Now, you said there's been significant progress, but does that mean that you're optimistic that this will go through on the 2020 census? How close are you to achieving this goal?
It's hard to say, right? Because our organization, the Campaign I Take on Hate, has been really active on the grassroots level, but the grassroots impact can only have so much of an impact. Mm-hmm. This is a decision that the government has to make, specifically the U.S. Census Bureau, and it has to go through a very specific bureaucratic and administrative process. I'm optimistic, but I'm also a student of history, and I know that precedent hasn't been heartening. So it's a guarded optimism.
Realism. It's, you're a pragmatist, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is 8:25. You're listening to The Morning Amp, powered by Vocalo. On the phone, Khaled A. Beydoun. Thank you so much for letting us know more about this, and we wish you so much luck going forth in this.
And you said the grassroots effort can only do so much, Khaled. What else can people listening do to put pressure to make sure that this MENA box is achieved?
Yeah, I think, Arab and Middle Eastern Americans should definitely go to our website, www.takeonhate.org, and learn more about the efforts that we've made. But I'd also encourage other communities of color who have, an interest in civil rights progress at large to also learn by visiting that same website.
Thank you so much for making time for us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
8:26, you are listening to The Morning Amp, brought to you by Vocalo. Coming up in just a bit, Joe Hopkins.
Coming up in just a bit, we're going to hear from Arlen Parsa.